Okay, we got some 223 rounds here. And I'm going to be talking about these cartridges as far as combat. 200 yards to like 250 yards. So this one here is the Federal 75 grain. This is one of my favorites and one of the most accurate that I use right here. Federal 75 grain, full metal jacket. Then the next one, this is a Fiocchi 55 grain, your popular 55 grain right here. And then the last one is Fiocchi, but they're using Hornady Vmax Bullets to add to the case. So here's a 40 grain Vmax. And if you notice on the bullet here, you notice that for about a 16th to an 1/8 of an inch right in here, you can see how it's real flat in that area right there. That area is real flat because it works good with the lands and grooves in the barrel, but also this is a bolt tail too. So this is a boat tail. So these are very accurate, even though they're light. These are extremely accurate and pretty much a varminting round. So once again, we've got 3 cartridges here. We've got the 75 grain, 55 grain, and 40 grain. And then here's a card that I have for the stats and stuff. I'm going to back out of the camera a little bit here so you can see. So you can see the stats here. Okay, and I'm probably going to read them to you. Probably what I'm going to be doing. So first I'm going to center this. Okay, what we've got here, let me see if I can clear this camera up for you here a little bit. Let's see if that works. Still looks a little blurry. Okay, that's better. All right, here we go. So 223, weight 40 grain, 55.75. 40 grain, 55.75. The ballistic coefficient on the 40 grain is 0.151. The 55 is 0.269 and the 75 is 0.400. Velocity on the 40 grain is 3650. 55 grain is 3240 and the 75 grain is 2775. Energy at 200 yards, 40 grain 516, 55 grain 785, 75 grain 908 foot-pounds. At 500 yards, 40 grain is 115 foot-pounds, 55 grain is 339, and the 75 grain is 514. What this translates to at 500 yards is 115 pounds is about what I get on my Browning Buckmark for a 22 Velociter, 40 grain. So it's kind of like having a 22 pistol at 500 yards. 339 foot-pounds is like having a 9mm at 500 yards. And the 75 grain having 514 foot-pounds is like having a 40 Smith & Wesson or 45 at 500 yards. So there's kind of a big difference right here in energy as far as 500 yards, but not just 500 yards, 200 yards also. Notice that the 75 grain has got 908 foot-pounds of energy. And notice that the lightest one's got 516 and the middle one is 785. So you do gain, a couple 100 foot-pounds at them distances. Even in the combat distance at 200 to 250 yards, you're still getting a lot more energy out of this round here. And I'm not saying it's the best round, but I'm just saying that energy sometimes matters depending on your purpose of what you're doing with the rifle. If you're deer hunting or whatever you're doing, If it's according to your laws in your state or whatever, that you can use a 223 to hunt deer or whatever, at least you know what kind of energies you're getting here. And some states have a minimum energy requirement that they go by, and that's why they restrict some calibers, because you have to have a certain amount of energy foot-pounds to take game, and that's why they're so picky sometimes on what you can use for deer hunting. But what we're talking about here is from the standpoint of combat, which is 200 to 250 yards. This is combat, for example, say like in your rifle, your bolt-action rifle, or your AR-15. I have a Ruger AR-15 5.56 that I enjoy shooting with just factory sights, no bells and whistles, just plain Jane. So let's look at our drop here. At 200 yards, if we have a 0, that's kind of like having a 0 at 50 yards. And even though from 50 yards to 200 yards is quite a haul as far as mid-range trajectory, it only comes up about 2 inches. So you don't have to worry about the differences between these grain weights here, because at 200 yards, they all have a 0. At 200 yards, at 50 yards, they're pretty much going to be about 0. But then when you get out to 300 yards, you notice just a little difference in the drop, like the 40 grain is 7.9, 75 grain 8.4, but that still isn't much. And that's within our 200 to 250 yard combat range, which there really isn't a difference between these three as far as drop when it comes to combat range. So they're all going to fly pretty flat. So some people were wondering, well, 200 yards 0, doesn't the bullet come up real high mid-range trajectory? No, it doesn't. It only comes up at most, it only comes up 2 inches. So you got a flat trajectory. It might be 2 inches high, but that ain't that much compared to the whole 300 yards or whatever. So at 300 yards, you see here, there's about an inch or a little over an inch difference between these three, which really isn't a lot. But then we got the energy here. You see that once you start pushing past 300 yards, the energy drops quite a bit right here. So this is just from the standpoint of combat and accuracy and stuff like that. So accuracy at long range, every rifle is different, but I found that longer ranges, that 75 grain gives me some of the best accuracy, and then maybe the 40 grain, and then your common 55 grain here. The accuracy is close. So these two are kind of close, but the 75 grain really does perform really well in my rifle. So, but anyway, I haven't been able to get out to range to show you stuff on paper or anything like that yet. So one of these days I'll have to get out somewhere where I can shoot. So that would be fun to do that. But anyway, hope you enjoyed the video. So this is about the 223, talking about the 250 yard combat range. What kind of velocity, what kind of drop, what kind of energy you can expect. Even the ballistic coefficient you can enter into your data, like on your computer, if you want to figure out, specific distances, what kind of drop and energy you got. You can sometimes use this ballistic coefficient, but always test it in the field. Never just trust your ballistic coefficients. Always test it in the field. But anyway, thanks for watching the video.